How well do you truly know those you hold closest, those you trust with your heart, your secrets, your very existence? Margaret Hensley thought she knew. She believed in love, loyalty, and the family she had built her life around. But sometimes, trust can be a fatal mistake. When Margaret's life ended at 65, she left behind more than memories. She left a revelation that shattered her family and unveiled a story no one could have foreseen. A $1.7 million insurance policy, not for her son or her husband, but for a name no one expected. A betrayal so deep it rewrote everything her loved ones thought they knew. Margaret's silence hid a devastating truth, one that only surfaced when it was too late. Her life, her choices, and her final act of justice tell a story that demands to be heard. One question lingers: why? Stay with us as we unravel the truth. Welcome to True Crime Chronicles, where we bring you gripping, told, and untold stories of crime. A huge thank you to our viewers, especially our subscribers, for your unwavering support. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with our daily true crime stories. Margaret Hensley's life was a testament to perseverance. Born into humble beginnings, she learned early on the value of hard work and determination. Nothing came easy to her, every milestone was earned through sheer will. Margaret's journey was one of transformation, a woman who refused to let her circumstances define her. In her younger years, she married her first love, believing he'd be her partner for life. Together, they started a family, dreaming of a stable, loving future. But life had other plans. Her husband's sudden death left Margaret a young widow, raising her only son, Daniel, alone, with no clear path forward. For years, Margaret poured her energy into providing for Daniel. She climbed the ranks in the corporate world, her sharp mind and relentless drive earning her success in the competitive finance industry. Despite her achievements, Margaret stayed grounded, her values rooted in family, trust, and integrity. Daniel was her world, and she was determined to give him the opportunities she never had. From top-tier schools to extravagant family trips, she gave him everything. But love is complicated, and relationships don't always follow the script we write for them. Daniel, spoiled by his mother's sacrifices, grew distant, often seeing her efforts as overbearing. The bond between them was fragile, one Margaret fought to preserve, but it always seemed just out of reach. As years passed, Margaret craved companionship. Enter Victor Ramsey, a charismatic 50-year-old who swept into her life with an energy that felt like a breath of fresh air. 13 years her junior, Victor brought a spark Margaret hadn't felt in years. Their relationship raised eyebrows. Margaret, a successful, independent woman, paired with a man whose past was marked by questionable choices. But Margaret didn't care about the whispers. For the first time in years, she felt seen, and she let herself believe Victor's intentions were pure. Yet, deep down, doubts lingered. Victor's charm sometimes felt too polished, his stories occasionally inconsistent. Margaret brushed these thoughts aside, blaming her own hesitations. She wanted to believe in love again, even if a part of her remained cautious. But Victor wasn't the only strain in Margaret's life. Her relationship with Daniel grew increasingly tense. Now an adult, Daniel sought attention and validation but rarely returned the love his mother poured into him. Margaret tried to guide him, offering advice and support, but their conversations often ended in arguments. Daniel saw her as controlling, Margaret saw him as ungrateful. Still, her love for him never wavered. She held on to hope that their bond could be mended with time. The cracks in Margaret's world were subtle at first, Victor's charm began to fade, and Daniel's actions left her feeling unappreciated. But Margaret, ever resilient, believed she could overcome these challenges. She had rebuilt her life before, surely she could do it again. Margaret's love for her family remained unshaken, even as doubts crept in. She balanced her roles as a mother and wife, trying to hold her family together. But love, trust, and loyalty are fragile, and sometimes even the strongest among us can't see the storm brewing until it's too late. Margaret was about to face a betrayal she never anticipated, one that would unravel everything she thought she knew about those closest to her. It began with small moments, shared glances that lasted too long, laughter that carried an unfamiliar tone, a casual familiarity that blurred boundaries. Victor Ramsey and Daniel Hensley's relationship didn't start with obvious signs. It grew quietly, hidden in the spaces where trust should have thrived. Victor's charisma, which had once captivated Margaret, now turned toward Daniel. Daniel, craving attention and validation, was drawn to Victor's charm. At first, their interaction seemed innocent, a natural extension of family dynamics. But to Daniel, it was more. He felt unseen by his mother's towering success, suffocated by what he saw as her controlling love. Victor offered something different, attention that felt exhilarating, a connection that felt like escape. What began as attention-seeking spiraled into something darker. Daniel convinced himself this was love, that Victor was his ally in a world where he felt misunderstood. Their secret grew, hidden behind closed doors, in moments stolen when Margaret wasn't watching. Margaret, sharp and intuitive, began to notice shifts: Victor's distracted demeanor, Daniel's subtle defiance. Small inconsistencies gnawed at her, a story that didn't add up, a conversation that stopped when she entered the room. Alone, these moments meant nothing, but together, they formed a picture she couldn't ignore. When Margaret uncovered the affair, it was a quiet devastation. The truth hit her like a tidal wave, but she remained composed. The betrayal wasn't just Victor's, it was Daniel's, her own son, the person she had devoted her life to. They had crossed a line, conspiring to break her heart. Yet Margaret didn't confront them. She didn't scream or demand answers. Instead, she chose silence, locking her pain away. Perhaps she knew confrontation would change nothing, or maybe she feared the truth would shatter her completely. Instead, she made a decision that would alter everything. Without a word, Margaret met with her attorney and changed her life insurance policy. The $1.7 million, once promised to Victor, now went to Clara Thompson, her loyal housekeeper and confidant of 30 years. Clara had been more than an employee. She was a witness to Margaret's triumphs and struggles, a trusted friend who listened without judgment. Clara had noticed Margaret's declining health, standing by her side as she faced a mysterious illness. Margaret's decision to name Clara as the beneficiary wasn't just about revenge, it was about trust. She knew Clara would honor her wishes, that the money would be safe. It was Margaret's final act of control in a world slipping from her grasp. Margaret never revealed she knew about the affair. Her silence was both her strength and her burden. She carried on with dignity, determined to see her plan through. Her actions, not her words, would expose the betrayal. By entrusting her legacy to Clara, she ensured the truth would unravel, piece by painful piece, even after she was gone. Her decision was her justice, a silent declaration that love and loyalty couldn't be betrayed without consequence. How far does the ripple of betrayal travel? When the truth about Elaine Monroe's murder came to light, it didn't just end with the convictions of her husband, Marlon Jones, and her daughter, Cassie Monroe. The shockwaves of their actions continued to unravel lives, expose hidden truths, and raise questions that lingered long after the courtroom fell silent. Elaine's story, a tale of love, trust, and devastating deception, left a legacy that went beyond her $1.7 million insurance policy and the justice served. What happened after the gavel fell? What secrets remained buried, and what new battles emerged in the shadow of Elaine's death? Stay with us as we dive into the aftermath, where the truth is never as simple as it seems. Welcome back to True Crime Chronicles. A heartfelt thank you to our viewers and subscribers for your unwavering support as we uncover the stories that demand to be told. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to join us for daily true crime tales, both told and untold. Elaine Monroe's trial was a spectacle that gripped the nation. The image of a devoted mother and wife, poisoned by her own family, haunted everyone who followed the case. Marlon Jones, the charismatic manipulator, and Cassie Monroe, the daughter swayed by his promises, were behind bars, Marlon for life without parole, Cassie with a chance at parole after 25 years. But for those left behind, the story was far from over. Elaine's decision to name Althea Carter, her loyal maid of 30 years, as the beneficiary of her $1.7 million insurance policy was a masterstroke of silent justice. It ensured that neither Marlon nor Cassie would profit from their betrayal. Yet, this act opened a new chapter of conflict, one that would test loyalties, uncover hidden motives, and challenge the very meaning of justice. Althea Carter, now thrust into the spotlight, became an unlikely central figure. A woman who had spent decades quietly supporting Elaine, she was unprepared for the attention and the scrutiny that came with her inheritance. To Althea, the money wasn't just a windfall, it was a responsibility. Elaine had trusted her to honor her values, to use the funds in a way that reflected the life she had lived. But the world saw something different, a housekeeper suddenly wealthy, a target for speculation and greed. Friends, distant relatives, and even strangers began to question her role in Elaine's life. Was Althea truly just a loyal confidant, or did she know more than she had revealed? Althea's life changed overnight. The media painted her as a rags-to-riches story, but the reality was far more complex. She moved from Elaine's modest home to a small apartment in a quieter part of town, hoping to escape the public eye. Yet, the questions followed her. Anonymous letters arrived, some praising her loyalty, others accusing her of manipulating Elaine for the money. How could a maid end up with $1.7 million? One tabloid headline screamed. Althea, a private woman by nature, struggled under the weight of suspicion. She confided in a close friend, "I never asked for this. Elaine gave me her trust, not just her money. I just want to do right by her." Determined to honor Elaine's memory, Althea decided to use the funds to establish a foundation in Elaine's name. The Elaine Monroe Legacy Fund would support women escaping difficult circumstances, offering scholarships and resources to those who, like Elaine, had fought to rise above their challenges. It was a fitting tribute, but it also drew attention from those who felt entitled to a piece of the fortune. Among them was Elaine's estranged brother, Harold Monroe, who emerged from years of silence to stake a claim. Harold, a man with a history of financial troubles, argued that as Elaine's only living sibling, he deserved a share of the estate. He hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit against Althea, claiming Elaine had been coerced into changing her insurance policy under duress. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through the community, reigniting debates about Elaine's final days. Had Althea influenced her decision? Was there more to their relationship than anyone knew? The legal battle became a new circus, with tabloids speculating about Althea's intentions and Harold's sudden reappearance. Althea, resolute, stood her ground. Elaine knew what she was doing, she told her attorney. She wanted her legacy to mean something, not to be torn apart by greed. As the lawsuit gained traction, it prompted authorities to revisit Elaine's case. Harold's claims, though shaky, raised questions about whether other factors had contributed to Elaine's death. Could there have been additional players involved, or was Harold's lawsuit simply a desperate grab for money? Investigators, still haunted by the brutality of Elaine's poisoning, decided to dig deeper into the months leading up to her death. They focused on Althea, not as a suspect, but as a potential source of new information. Her detailed testimony during the trial had been pivotal, but had she held anything back? Detectives interviewed Althea again, this time probing for details she might have overlooked. They asked about Elaine's relationships beyond Marlon and Cassie. Had there been other visitors to the house? Any unusual behavior from neighbors or colleagues? Althea, though initially hesitant, shared a memory that hadn't seemed significant at the time. In the months before Elaine's decline, a man named Gregory Wells, a former business associate from Elaine's real estate days, had visited her home several times. Gregory had a reputation for being persuasive, with a history of shady deals. Althea recalled overhearing a heated conversation between him and Elaine about a failed investment. She told him to leave her alone, Althea said. But he kept coming back. This revelation opened a new line of inquiry. Investigators tracked down Gregory, now living in a neighboring state. Under questioning, he admitted to pressuring Elaine to invest in a risky real estate venture shortly before her health declined. He denied any involvement in her death, but his financial records showed large, unexplained deposits around the time of Elaine's poisoning. Could Gregory have had a motive? Had he colluded with Marlon or Cassie, or acted independently? The police couldn't tie him directly to the poison, but his presence added a layer of complexity to an already tangled case. Meanwhile, Cassie Monroe's life behind bars was a study in regret. The young woman who had been manipulated by Marlon was grappling with the weight of her actions. In prison, Cassie began writing letters, not to her mother, whom she could never face, but to Althea. "I know you'll never forgive me," one letter began, "but I need you to know I didn't understand what I was doing. Marlon made it sound like we had no other way." The letters were raw, filled with guilt and a desperate search for redemption. Althea, torn between anger and pity, didn't respond at first. But as the letters continued, she began to see Cassie not just as a betrayer, but as a young woman who had been preyed upon by a master manipulator. Cassie's prison therapist encouraged her to share more, hoping it might aid the investigation. In a surprising turn, Cassie revealed a detail she hadn't mentioned during the trial. Marlon had mentioned a friend who supplied the poison. She didn't know the friend's name, but the description matched Gregory Wells, a man who had been in contact with Marlon during Elaine's final months. This bombshell prompted investigators to re-examine Marlon's phone records. They uncovered deleted texts between Marlon and an unlisted number, later traced to Gregory. The messages were vague but suggested a transaction. Got it. Make sure it's untraceable. The new evidence wasn't enough for a conviction, but it painted a chilling picture. Had Marlon and Gregory conspired beyond Cassie's knowledge? Was Gregory the mastermind, or just a pawn in Marlon's scheme? The police couldn't charge Gregory without more proof, but his name was now linked to the case, casting a shadow over his claims of innocence. Harold's lawsuit against Althea eventually collapsed. The court found no evidence that Elaine had been coerced. Her decision to name Althea was deliberate and sound. Harold, humiliated, retreated from public view, his claims exposed as opportunistic. But the legal battle had a silver lining. It brought renewed attention to Elaine's foundation. Donations poured in, and the Elaine Monroe Legacy Fund grew, supporting women across the country. Althea, though exhausted by the ordeal, found purpose in carrying out Elaine's vision. She spoke at community events, sharing Elaine's story to inspire others. "Elaine taught me that strength isn't loud," she said at one event. "Her silence was her power, and I'll make sure her voice is heard." Marlon, isolated in prison, remained defiant, refusing to acknowledge the new evidence linking him to Gregory. His silence only deepened the mystery. Cassie, however, continued her path toward redemption. She enrolled in prison education programs, studying psychology to understand how she had been manipulated. Her letters to Althea became less about seeking forgiveness and more about understanding Elaine's life. "I wish I had seen her the way you did," she wrote. "She was everything I didn't deserve." Elaine Monroe's story didn't end with her death or the trial. It lived on in the lives she touched, the justice she secured, and the questions that lingered. Was Gregory Wells a silent partner in her murder, or just a peripheral figure caught in the web? Would Cassie ever find peace, or would her guilt define her? And how would Althea carry the burden of Elaine's legacy in a world quick to judge? These questions remind us that betrayal leaves scars that time can't fully heal, but justice, quiet, deliberate, and unshakable, can leave a mark that endures. Elaine's life was a testament to resilience, her death a call for truth. Her story challenges us to look closer at those we trust, to question what lies beneath the surface. What would you do in her place? Would you have chosen silence, or screamed the truth? Elaine's legacy lives on, not in the betrayal she endured, but in the justice she ensured. Join us next time as we uncover another story that demands to be told.